I was going to say, this is probably the easiest episode we've ever done to sum up. Don't be a jerk, you know? Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the Guns Podcast US, brought to you by Guns Magazine and sponsored now by Tango Down. I'm your host, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs as we talk about the interesting stuff that makes up the world of shooting. And of course, here's our newly minted official co-host, Roy Huntington. Hey, Roy, welcome to 2026.
I just feel like I feel important now because I'm a co-host.
Well, you are. You are.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
And now that you're co-host, you can join me in welcoming our great new sponsor, Tango Down. They've got lots of great stuff, and we're going to see a quick word, and then we'll be right back to the conversation about what we're going to talk about today. But here's a word from Tango Down.
Tango Down has been a trusted leader in firearms, parts, and accessories for more than 2 decades. Whether you're upgrading your everyday carry or finishing out your next rifle build, Tango Down has you covered. Their product line continues to grow with new releases coming in 2026. Visit tangodown.com to explore the full lineup and sign up for email updates so you don't miss what's next. Tango Down, combat gear without peer.
Well, Roy, we're pulling one of our patented left turns with this episode because we had something planned and we'll probably do it next week. But we got to complaining and bitching and moaning about something. And I said, stop right there. We're going to hit record and we're going to do an episode. So we're going to talk about internet forums, which quite frankly, there's whale doo-doo and there's product liability lawyers. And then there's internet forums right below that. So folks are going to get an earful today. And I'll say one thing before we get started. Not every person that hangs out on forums is a knucklehead. But if you hang out on forums, you have to admit there's a lot of them out there. So, Roy, you were kind of the one that started us on this conversation with some real great examples of morons on the internet. So when somebody says gun forum to you, besides rolling your eyes, what do you say?
Well, you know what? They could be something very good.
Yeah.
And like you say, we're not disparaging all of it and everyone. I know people who they work very hard. They try very hard to police their forums, and frankly, I think it shows. I found that the sort of dedicated collector forums, the Colt collectors or the Smith Wesson collectors or people like that, their forums are usually pretty well behaved. People tend to be polite. If someone says, hey, I have this new gun, I can't, I don't know what it is, rather than the next post being, well, you're a moron because you should never own any guns. Usually the next post is something like, welcome to the forum. What you have is a very classic Smith & Wesson Model 10 from pre-war. And then there's usually this engaged conversation afterwards. Well, gosh, that's fun. There's nothing wrong with that. But I foolishly went to a forum the other day. The reader brought it up and he said, hey, I thought you'd be interested in this. And so against my better judgment and with a quaking mouse finger, I clicked on the link and it was very typical of it. Somebody came on and said, hey, I have this rifle and, I have some questions about it. And so the next poster was very nice. Hey, welcome to the forum. You have a really cool gun. It's a this and this and this and this and this and this. And the very next post was, if you don't know what you have and how to work it, then you have no right to own a gun. It's like, really? You have this guy who was pretty obviously a new gun owner. This was your chance to, shine. And then it basically went to poop after that.
Mhm.
Well, anyone who doesn't know what that is, must be a moron. And, and so I thought, I have no words for this. Why is the default mode to be an aggressive jerk?
Yep. And you made a good point that I really wanted to make out of the gate, and I failed to, is this is kind of directed at, well, really two people. First and foremost, though, it's at the newer shooters who are going to the internet to try to find things, and they immediately get flamed alive. And as you pointed out, Roy, I'm sure a lot of them go, "Are you kidding me? Really?"
I know. Yeah.
And
then they sell their gun.
Yeah.
They say,
Or at
why
least
do I
quit
want to hang
shooting.
around with these guys?
Yeah, exactly. And I will tell you, and I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to get the angry emails, but I was actually having a conversation the other day with somebody, and he asked, "Are you this? Have you done this?" And it's not shooting related, but it is something that we all kind of know something about. And I said, no, because every time I've been on a forum, I've never gone to get my license, shall we say, because every forum I've ever been on, I said, those guys are the most crotchety, hateful, snarky, sarcastic, rude bunch of people I've ever been around. And I said, if that is how that particular hobby is run, I don't want to be part of it. And he's like, "Oh, wow. Well, yeah, you're kind of right." And I said, well, that right there, there's another hobby that I might get involved with. And I'm completely turned off because in those forums, it tends to start with, well, I know all this and you're just an idiot for even asking that question. And it just kills me when I see that in the gun world. And
it's elitist snob syndrome. And what I have found is that the people who usually know the most and who have the most experience are usually the most modest and helpful, kind people.
Yep.
It's the ones who don't are usually, they turn into these aggressive asses.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's that old thing about beware the old guy with gray in his mustache who's shooting a revolver, Well, I absolutely promise you that if you walk up to that guy on the shooting range and say, "Hey, would you tell me about your revolver?" He would say, "Sure. Would you like to shoot it? Here, let me write." He's not going to say, "Well, you're an idiot if you don't know what this is."
Yeah. It astounds me because, well, first of all, why would you be that way to strangers? Imagine if you were on the street and it's like, "Hi, pleasure to meet you, Bill. Well, you're stupid and you're an idiot and I can't believe you're even here." And it's like, whoa, what's that guy?
No, it's the anonymity,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I've used the analogy, if somebody comes to your front door, you open the door, you punch them in the mouth, then you close the door.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I mean.
Welcome to the internet.
On the rare times that I've ever posted on a forum, I log in with my real name. I say exactly what it is, my experience is, and all verifiable. You just have to Google my name, right?
Yeah.
I'm not hiding behind anything. This is my opinion. This is why it's my opinion. And if you want to talk to me about it, this is how you find me. But yet then somebody, Big John 44, will say, "Well, you're just an idiot and all you gun writers are scabs." And, and it's like, well, who are you? And,
Well, didn't you just tell somebody that? Well, okay, you're right. Based on my 60 years of shooting and having shot everything everywhere, well, I'm sure your experience is far greater than that. So I'll listen to you.
I know, but you can't get to him. It really doesn't matter. I mean, if I was on a forum not too long ago, I had a car question about my Ranchero, and they were actually really nice. It was a nice forum. It was Ranchero Collectors or something like that, and I had a question about the brake system that was a little bit complicated for me. And so this guy came on, and I did a couple things. Number one, you look at their post. And he's got like 8,000 posts, right? So I found they're either idiots and all they do is post, or they actually really know what they're doing and they're there to help people.
Right.
And this guy was one of those. And he said, "Dear Mr. Huntington, welcome to our forum. as a retired Ford mechanic,
Oh,
you
wow.
know, I worked on your car when it was new.
Yeah.
And this is what you need to go. Here's a good link you should go to. Buy these parts for it. And if you have any questions, private message me. And it's like angels were singing in the background, you know? And it was like the next guy posted, he says, "Hey, Roy, welcome to the forum. You should listen to Bill. He's helped all of us before. He really knows what he's doing," you know? And I mean, that's what it should be like.
Exactly. Well, and another thing that we got fired up on, and this is a personal pet peeve, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard, is when the argument starts, then a guy will say something to the effect of, "Well, I don't own that gun," or "I've never shot that gun," or but yet, why did you just give me your opinion on something you've never even handled? And why?
I read on a forum somewhere that somebody said that was a bad gun because his brother-in-law said that he knew a guy who had one. Yeah. You know,
that is not adding to the conversation. And frankly, your opinion, you're pulling it out of your butt.
Well, you know, there's an old saying, and I'll have to paraphrase it, but it's something about choose your friends wisely, because the people who build you up, you know, that's supportive and that's good for you. But then there are the ones who take you down, and that's negative. And I think too many of these forums are involved like that. You know, somebody like you say who's new to shooting, they get on a forum, "Hey, I'm new to shooting, you know, what holster should I buy?" And then if the first post is, "Well, if you don't even know what holster you should buy, well, then why do you own a gun?" Well, and you're right. It's like, click off, you know. And I don't know what the satisfaction is for being negative like that. I get a lot of satisfaction from helping somebody like that.
Yep.
You know, and I know you do too. That's part of the fun of being an editor of the magazine and whatnot, is that people have questions and we draw upon our experience and we try to steer them in the right direction. And they invariably appreciate it, though.
Yeah. I will say a little personal kind of anecdote here. Now that the print version of Guns Magazine is gone and I don't have that daily responsibility anymore, you know, I'm still writing for gunsmagazine.com. We're doing the podcast and all that, but my day is not as nearly as full as it used to be. So I'm trying to figure my next act. And I had some good advice from somebody that said the best thing you can do is mentor people.
I think it is a certainly generates a positive effect usually because there's a reason why you're a teacher or a mentor or someone who volunteers at the local food bank or something, because you like to reach out like that. I've always found, though, I know most of the top gunsmiths in our industry, right? Mm-hmm. And what I've seen countless times over the years is that a new gunsmith will come onto the stage and they've got an attitude, and they're flashy, and they're opinionated, and they'll often get a fanboy group following them, right?
Yeah.
But then there are the other guys that have been around for a long time, and if you were to meet them and talk to them, you wouldn't even really know what it was they were doing. Hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm a gunsmith. I build guns sometimes. Really? What kind? Oh, just interesting old Smith and Wesson revolvers. I mean, they would never say, I build the best revolvers ever built by humankind.
Yeah.
Yep. And those are the guys, though, who always do the best job and who always... I mean, if I call Hamilton Bowen and say, Hamilton, I'm doing this gun thing and I have a question, he doesn't say, well, if you had any sense at all, you wouldn't even do what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Hamilton says, boy, I hear you, and I struggled with that too. Here's what I do.
Yeah. And, I think you hit on another point there, that folks that take that attitude don't last very long. If you want to have a long career as a gun writer, a gunsmith, whatever, plumber, anything, you don't come in and immediately start tearing folks down and acting, the old fake it till you make it is fine to a point until you start tearing others down, because generally invariably what happens is 15 years later, people going, "Hey, do you remember that Roy Huntington guy?" No, man, he was all over and kind of a flash in the pan. And I can make a whole list of gun writers that were that way, and they're YouTube personalities. Really, one minute you're at the top, the next minute nobody knows who you are. Gunsmiths, even brands, same kind of thing. So, slow and steady wins the race, and slow and steady, and being a decent person, a decent human being. You don't have to kiss everybody on the lips, but you at least have to be a decent person until somebody gives you reason not to be.
Well, and then just distance yourself from them. I don't follow sports, and I know that's heretical, but it just doesn't interest me at all. But what I have noticed when you're looking in the news or something is there's always some new hire football player, his first or second year, they're paying him $20 million a year. And what does he do? He beats his girlfriend, or he gets arrested for having narcotics, or he drives his new Ferrari 120 miles an hour and smashes it and kills somebody. Yeah. Right? Then there's the guy who's been playing baseball for 22 years, and he's a spokesperson for a hospital that treats children's cancer. Yeah. Right? And he doesn't take any money. Yep. Or they mentor little league teams in their, they're just like decent fellows. Yeah. And they have a long, successful career, and their fans really appreciate what they do. But these other flash in the pan guys, it's like, yeah, you think you're pretty hot, but you're not going to be hot tomorrow. Yeah. And I'm going to say something else that's really funny. And you will know exactly what I'm talking about, is that people die in our industry, right? Everybody dies everywhere. And to me, there's a real touchstone that happens afterwards. When people die.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. When people die. And of course, your friends say, "Hey, did you hear Bill died?" or something like that. Well, it's always two ways, right? You open up the email and it's like, "Hey, did you hear Bill died? Good riddance, you jerk." Right?
Yeah.
Or else, "Hey, did you hear Bill died? Gosh, he was always so darn nice, and he mentored me through this, and he gave me an opportunity when I was first opening my business, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here." The industry is less for him being gone. Yep. And so, I know which one I want to be. But I think there's a lot of people there's just a I don't know what, like a separation in their brain, and they just don't see that difference. Yeah. Their narcissistic ego, I don't know. They think, when you demean someone else, it's supposed to make you elevate you, right? Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it's exactly the opposite. So,
and I was going to make the point that, and I think we talked about it here a long time ago. I had a conversation. "Well, yeah, this guy said this and this." I said, "Did he say anything positive?" "Well, not really." Well, there you go. It's easy to tear down. It's harder to point out the good and the bad.
Well, I noticed with the forums, if you see an immediate personal attack, where you're an idiot and you shouldn't even own that gun. Well, that's because they probably don't have a lot to say. Yeah. They've got opinions, and they have what they think people are going to like them say and all that, but they don't have really well-founded personal opinions. Every once in a while on our YouTube videos, which is a lot like forums because there's comments, you engage and they post things. A lot of times you'll say, I had one the other day, a guy said, "Well, as a matter of fact, it was about the podcast." And they said, "Well, I just wasted 10 minutes of my time here. You guys obviously don't know what you're talking about. You're just a couple of fuds. And if you knew what you were talking about, you would have said that this about this gun and this and this and this. Bye." Right? I said, okay. So I'm a little bit curious, right? So I try to answer them. "Gee, I'm sorry to see you go." We were talking based on our 80 years of experience in doing what we do. And so we may not know much about what we're talking about. But I clicked on this guy's YouTube handle, right? Yeah. Of course, they never have their real name, Yeah. And he had like 2 videos, and it was about weird things you do with eggs. And it was like how to make a black egg when you cook it or something like that,
Okay.
right? You know,
Yeah.
so I couldn't help it. I posted, I said, I noticed on your YouTube channel, you have egg videos. But if you're a topic expert on what we were talking about on this show, maybe you should make some videos and show us what it is we were doing wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sure other people would like to see your opinion and see your expertise. So,
Yeah.
just saying. And then I sign my name, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I almost never hear back from those people.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I hear back, they surprise me because they say, "Dear Mr. Huntington, sorry, I was kind of a jerk on that. I didn't realize that you would actually read my comment and that you would take the time to respond."
I got
Right.
caught.
Yeah, I got caught.
Yeah.
And especially when you go to their they tell you all about all your mistakes and tactics and all that. And you go to their
Yeah.
website and they've got like, Japanese kitty cat videos on their website.
Yeah.
It's like, really? I was talking to someone who is very well known in the industry who has since retired. He was a custom gunsmith, and he started one of the very first gun and knife forums. I don't know, 25 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
A long time ago, and it was very popular, and it was kind of high end. So these were people who really like custom 1911s and custom guns in general. Were a lot of custom knife people, and I remember when it started, it was really nice. It was like these people were really sharing their experiences, sharing what they liked about these new designs, sharing pictures of their custom guns they had made. And it was like, gosh, this was a lot of fun. But I noticed 4 or 5 years later, the forum was down. And so I contacted him. I said, "Hey, it seemed like that was a pretty nice forum. What was that?" And he said, it was initially nice. He said, but it got to the point that all I did was have to police it to make sure the idiots didn't post, assholishness comments. And he said they single-handedly destroyed what we had going here, which was a really nice, positive kind of a forum.
Yeah.
And I thought, what? And I have no idea why this is. I have no idea why someone goes, "Here's this new poster. Hey, I just bought a gun and I'm curious to know about concealed carry ammunition. My friend told me I should use this and another friend told me I should use that. Would anyone here please give me some advice?" Okay, well, that's a magical moment now, right?
Yep. Yep.
You have every opportunity to respond to this person in a way that's helpful and supportive and, positive and educational. And I just do not know why people insist on just simply firing a broadside.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of is it's the old, they don't have a lot of self-confidence,
self-esteem,
esteem. Yeah. So they think that by demeaning these other people that it makes them bigger, better, stronger, when in actuality, it's exactly the opposite.
I was going to address that very point that here's the secret. I don't care if you're 20 or you're 80. If that's how you deal with people on internet forums, it doesn't make you look better, stronger, smarter, faster. It makes you look like an idiot. And the entire 99.99% of the world is going, that guy's an idiot. So the only person you're fooling is yourself.
It's so true. I'm not a rabid fan, but I've been known to fly an electric radio controlled airplane. I've got one or two, a big old Tundra, high wing plane. And so I'll fly it every once in a while and it's always enjoyable. So sometimes I will be looking at products or something and you'll do a search, right? Hey, what about this? And you will land on a forum, when you click on a link. And I will say this, with the RC forums, they almost always are what a forum should be. In other words, there's always an influx of new people. Hey, new to RC, just bought this, $100 kit. Can you give me any tips or tricks? What battery should I buy? And I mean, invariably, the people are helpful. Hey, welcome to RC Flying. You're going to love that. That's a great first kit. Here are things you should do. And then somebody else wades in. I just bought one of those for my son. He's really liked it. Here's a good link for buying spare parts. It's, they don't start out with, well, you're an idiot because you bought the cheapest airplane possible. Get off our forum. You're not worthy. My airplanes cost $1,000. Why should I, even talk to you? They don't do that. I mean, I will say this, though. I have a drone that I fly sometimes, take pictures and things like that. Not all the drone forums are the same way.
Right.
Sometimes they tend to be a little, I mean, they're like, well, that was stupid that you bought that drone. You obviously don't. And it's like, really?
And I've noticed something, and this is I wouldn't say this is an absolute, because I've seen folks that this does not apply to. But generally in forums, when a guy says Bill Smith, first of all, or, super drone guy 15, and they have 60 different pieces of kit. Well, I've got this drone and this drone and this drone, these propellers and these. It's like the more they put there, generally the shorter they are with people asking beginner questions. And it's like
very often. I agree.
Yeah. So,
well, that's like
don't be that guy
on a gun forum. If a guy's, 1911 kill dude is his handle. And then you'll look down a lot of times, and down there they'll say 4 less bear autos, 7 Nighthawk customs. He's like, he's building up his testosterone level to those around him. But then the guy who doesn't have anything, and then you find out that, well, no, actually he's a retired, 1911 master gunsmith, and he just quietly,
Can you imagine if, and I would say we're middle ground in terms of numbers and gear and all that stuff, because we both know guys that got way more than we do, but we do have a considerable number. Can you imagine if we listed all that on our handle on these forums?
It'd be embarrassing is what it would be.
People would be like, what?
Because these people, I will say, when these people who, a lot of times I was telling you about earlier, I was on a forum yesterday in response to a request, would I please come on and comment? And I commented, and it was like immediately they were just, well, you're an idiot, you don't know this, blah, 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 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. And, finally, somebody sent me a private message that said, dear Mr. Huntington, nice to have you on the forum. I've read about you for years. I've always respected your articles, and I like the podcast that you and Brent do. Sorry, but we have a lot of assholes on this forum, and it's a shame that one of them, or that they took it out on you. And so I thanked him. I said, I appreciate that. It's certainly been my experience on forums, but something struck me, though, is that he felt it necessary to do that personal as a private message, as opposed to just posting it. Sorry there's so many idiots on this forum, because I would post it on, it's like, hey, why are you guys acting the fool? We should be making this guy feel welcome. Years and years ago, it was when Smith Wesson reintroduced the classic series of revolvers. It was in the really early 2000s, and it was Clint Smith and I and Mike Venturino did like a 1-year certified effort at Smith & Wesson to get them to reintroduce the classic old guns. Tony Mealy was in charge of the performance center, and he was the one who would be able to open the door, because they came out initially as performance center guns. And the president was Roy Cooney. And I got along great with him. Like I told him, I said, hey, you have a really good first name, so, and so we were at the SHOT Show one time, and Roy Cooney was there, and Tony Mealy and Clint and Mike. And Tony said, yeah, I'm not having any luck, man. They're just not going for it. And I said, well, let's go talk to Roy. He's right there. And Tony was like, yeah, okay. We went over and I said, Roy, you need to bring back these guns because people would buy them, right? We'll put them on the cover of our magazines. And he looked at Tony. He said, Tony, is that true? And he said, well, yeah. And so he said, okay, let's do it. And he turned around and he walked away. Roy looked at me and he said, do you realize what just happened? And I said, yeah. So, but my point is, I wanted to build the behind is that we put, I think the first thing was a Thunder Ranch special. That's how we kind of got a foot in the door. So it was a end frame 44 special fixed sight 4-inch pencil barrel. It was like a really cool gun, right? So it was first of the old school revolvers back. We put it on the cover. Huge hit. Everybody loved it. Oh my God, finally, thank you, right? And I got a note from one of the moderators or something on the Smith Wesson forum, and he said, hey, this has really lit up the forum. I was wondering if you'd be kind enough to come over and sort of tell the backstory. And I said, sure. I didn't have a lot of experience with forums at the time.
Yeah.
So I logged in, identified myself, Roy Huntington, editor of American Handgunner magazine. And I will say that, and I asked Clint, and I asked Mike Venturino and John Taffin, would they please log in? Right. So there you go. There I was. There was John Taffin making some posts. There was Mike Venturino there was Clint Smith making some posts. Right. And these guys didn't get that every day,
Yeah.
So initially it was going pretty good.
and then
it just went to crap. I mean, then it was just like, well, all you guys are just, all your shills for the gun industry. And the only reason you put that on the cover was because you probably got a free one, which I didn't. You guys.
John Taffin doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, John Taffin doesn't know anything about big bore Smith and Wesson handguns, and I mean, it was unbelievable how it twisted like that, Now,
amazing.
To be fair, there were some people who said, my gosh, thank you. We're so honored. We have, hey guys, look, Mike Venturino is posting here, talking to us about how this happened behind the scenes, Roy, who I've written Handgunner for years. Thank you for coming on. Clint Smith. Oh my gosh. John Taffin. There were a lot of people were really happy, and we were really flattered and thrilled. We thought this is fun. It's nice to be able to go one-on-one with these people who've been reading the magazines. But boy, after about 6 pages, it was like,
Yeah.
And then I got emails from John and Clint and Duke, and they all basically said, well, that went south fast.
Well, it's great when you,
and they never went back. I never went back, so.
Yeah. So Mr. Troll on the forum, did that serve you well? You ran these guys off? I don't get it.
Which is a shame. Cause like I said, generally, like I said, the Smith and Wesson forum, the Culp forums, the Browning high power forums, they're usually pretty nice. And those first few page posts, I was thinking, wow, okay, this is pretty cool.
This will work out.
And even then, the moderators, there's a couple moderators waded in and said, hey, gentlemen, could we be a little bit more respectful here? These guys are taking the time to come to our, and it was like, all right, kind of after that, but still, I mean, I don't know. I think the point is we want to talk about forums. We both had terrible experiences on forums. I think many people don't go to forums because of that. I see a lot of fanboys go to forums because they all get together, typing on their computers in their mother's basement, and they all argue about tactics, right? Or they all argue why the new fill in the blank gun isn't any good, although none of them have ever actually seen one or shot it. And I don't know if it's a mutual admiration society or what. For me, it should be more of a kind of fellowship thing. Hey, I really like single shot rifles. Actually, that's a good forum. I've been on a couple of single shot rifle forums. They're always respectful. They're always interested. They always are helpful. They're, and it's fun, and so to me, it should be fun. So I don't know there's anything we can do about it.
I was going to say, this is probably the easiest episode we've ever done to sum up. Don't be a jerk. But I've realized this kind of applies to life in general, but it applies here. We don't have any shame anymore, and we don't have any respect. We're not respectful of each other. Driving, any place you drive in the country, used to be there was a few cities known for having awful drivers. It's everywhere across the entire world now. And shame, nobody's embarrassed of doing stupid, awful things anymore. Used to, if you did something dumb, for the most part, you'd be embarrassed by it. And now a lot of that stuff's even held up as, see, I'm assertive. No, you're still a jackass to the rest of us. So don't be that guy.
Our fundum will be in sharp focus here, because I saw this thing not too long ago. It was about traveling. I mean, when I first started to travel in the late 60s, I was young, 14, 15 years old. Well, I mean, you dress nicely, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in 63 when my parents flew across the world to Australia, my dad was stationed at the embassy there. I mean, I actually wore this like little boy sport coat with a tie. My mom was dressed in a long sleeve, nice dress with white gloves, and a hat. And everyone was very polite and very well behaved. And there were no screaming children running up and down the aisles. That would have been unthinkable, because one of the stewardesses would have grabbed him by his ear and marched him back to his mom,
Yep.
And they were talking about how the average airport crowd, if you look at today, what is it? They're in their jammies, they got their whoopee blankets, they're all got their head buried in the phone. There's nobody has any personal, care or attention or pride, I think. And of course, like you said, if you talk to them, they say, "Oh, what's it matter?" Well, it's self-respect,
Exactly.
And the forums, if you're one of those people who do that, well, then you're not showing yourself respect more than you're not showing the other guy respect, I think, so,
yep.
And, every once in a while I get this much enthusiastic, that much enthusiastic
I'll
about
zoom in there, Roy.
about starting a forum, because I think, well, you know what, we'll have something different. But I don't know how to manage it, because how do you vet people? How do you, and you have to monitor everyone constantly,
It's been tried and it's failed badly.
The only thing I will say is, I think it's revolverguy.com. Is that it? Revolver Guy? Yeah. Mike Wood, revolverguy.com. I'm pretty sure that's it. It's a good website, and his comments at the end of articles are essentially a forum, right?
Yeah.
Well, he does two things. Number one, when you post a comment, he vets it before it gets live, right? And I think that means a lot.
Yeah.
Because that way it
causes my head to hurt.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, I don't know how, I mean, when I post something, because I sometimes will go on as a favor, like he'll do some article about something I know about, and I'll go on and I'll say, "Gee, Mike, it was nice to see that, great information." But mine don't go live for at least a day or so, because he vets, even mine, vets them all, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, though, that it's really nice to read. You read an article, and then I really enjoy reading the comments, because it's always people who say things, like, I had one of those revolvers, and this was my experience. And another guy will wait in and say, my father carried one of those as a police officer, and this is what we found. Or, I mean, it's like, this is fun. But gosh, if we had a forum, it would be full time. Just answering the comments in the YouTube video is almost a full time job for me.
It is.
And I will say, I have discovered the delete button, and I'll tell you, if somebody just wades in, and they do periodically, well, this is stupid. Nobody knows anything what they're talking about. Anyone who watches this is an idiot, and you're going to die in hell, right? I used to try to go, "Gee, I'm sorry you hear that way," or "I'm sorry," and now I just go, delete.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
When I do that, I pretend that they're physically being thrown into a garbage dumpster, and they're screaming the whole way down, and it makes me feel good. So, and
that's very funny.
we've gone way too long on this, but I was see, it inspired a lot of enthusiasm on our part. But I got to say this too, and this is a little self-serving, but I'm going to say it. When you write that stuff in the comments or the emails, we long ago learned to have very thick skin as gun writers. So you're not harming us at all. You're just not. Don't waste your time, because we hit delete or we just go. If you're really awful, occasionally we'll send them to you. Did you see what this jackass said? This is great.
Oh, yeah.
You believe him?
We do share that. Yeah. And you know what? I'll be honest with you too. If you posted, and this is your real name, which there are some people who do that. You know, sure. I've had people because you click on their channel, it's like, oh, there's an actual guy, and here's his contact information, and he does a lot of gun videos, and so maybe he's taken me to task for something, but they do it in a positive way. Dear Mr. Huntington, I saw your review of this. I had one. My experiences are different. Here's what I reviewed. That's great. And he's not afraid to post with his real name.
Yeah.
But yeah, if people are doing these, open up the door, punch you, and close the door, so you never know who it is. They're hiding behind, the anonymity. It's like, sorry, you're just a fraidy cat.
It is. And I'll close real quick with a story I told Roy before we started recording. I've got, I'm a freelancer, so I've got part-time jobs. I'm doing some work for a government agency, and we posted a positive PR piece the other day. And one of the first comments on social media was, politicians are corrupt and you suck and you're all awful. And I thought, wow, okay. I wonder who this person is. I clicked on them. They don't even live in our state. And it's like, what dog do you have in this fight that you're so hateful that you had to go to the trouble to find the post we made? And then you spent the time to comment on it. I thought, man, that is a sad human being. So, or mentally ill, and it may go together. Who knows? But just don't be that guy or that gal. And they're still out there, but for the most part, I really do think most of the people that do that are under the influence of anonymity, and they're behaving to their dark side instead of their light side. There's a few people that are just flat jerks, always going to be jerks, and they're going to be the one that will have 3 people at their funeral, and 2 of those are probably paid to be there. But I think the vast majority of them, and like you said, Roy, I get comments occasionally. I'm sorry I said that. I was just being this, or I was having a bad day. I completely respect that, but don't be that guy. And if you do, own it. Yeah. So anyway,
well, it's the ready, fire, aim syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
They just fire something off, and then they do or do not apologize later. See, I think to me, and I'll wind my end of this up, is that if you're one of those people in your real life or on a forum or wherever, to where you're just the king of the grumpy forest, no matter what, I think that it's a real self-image issue there. Have you ever met somebody who was very calm and very peaceful? And
you mean like Roy Huntington, the Missouri Buddha?
But they don't seem to really get wound up about things, and if somebody messes up, they may be more inclined to say, you know what, I can see you're struggling with that. Can I help you? Rather than, or you're a dillwad. Why are you doing that? Yeah. You're an idiot. Well, to me, that only just means that you're tearing down the other people because you have a lack of self-confidence. And so, sorry, all you negative forum people, we're on to you.
Yeah, so exactly. And I was going to say, and when the guys that are always very calm, when they get wound up, the rare times they do, you got to stand back and go, oh, this is important. This is a big deal. So
that's
when
maybe.
Everything's shouting, nothing's important. So anyway, well, I'm looking down at our timer. Man, we went long. This may be one of our longest episodes in years, but I am glad that we made it to 2026, and hopefully we'll have a lot more episodes. And of course, we welcome Roy as now our official co-host, and glad that he's still with us after all these years. So make sure that you check out our great new sponsor, Tango Down.
Visit tangodown.com to explore the full lineup and sign up for email updates so you don't miss what's next. Tango Down, combat gear without peer.
leave us a comment, or of course you can reach us, editor at gunspodcast.us, and check out gunspodcast.us for more information. And other than that, Roy, here as we start 2026, any final words of wisdom, or the floor is yours?
Don't let it get you down, ladies and gentlemen. You know, life truly is what you make it. And you know, the Stoics, the old Stoic guys used to, they said something, and it struck a chord with me, as they said, if you meet resistance or failure, then make that the way, right? And I know it's hard to get your head around that kind of, but I had somebody not too long ago who called me up and he said, oh man, I got laid off from my job. And I said, well, man, that's great news. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, look at all the opportunity you have now. I mean, you just, you've opened up so many doors. And like 3 days later, he had a better job. You know, and he just went, gosh, I didn't even think of it like that before. So anyway, good luck in 2026. Be nicer if you're on a forum, please. And as Brent says, make a comment down below. Tell us why we're idiots for feeling this way.
Oh, you just opened the door, but that's fine. We've got that delete button. Anyway, Roy, thanks again. Thanks for everything you've done for the Guns Podcast. And I'm glad that we're still here, still talking about fun gun stuff. And hopefully we'll be doing it for a long, long time. So as I always say at the end of every single episode, on behalf of Roy Huntington, I'm Brent Wheat saying, now get out there and get shooting.